In a significant development on April 11, 2025, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, arrested 25-year-old Aliakbar Mohammed Amin from Lilburn, Georgia. Amin was taken into custody for making threatening communications directed at President Donald Trump, the White House, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. The FBI Atlanta field office described Amin's actions as threatening communications, though specific details about the nature of the threats have not been publicly disclosed. The arrest underscores the ongoing challenges law enforcement faces in addressing threats against public officials. Tulsi Gabbard, who currently serves as the Director of National Intelligence, publicly thanked federal and local law enforcement agencies for their swift action. In a post on X, formerly Twitter, she expressed gratitude for apprehending this radicalized, dangerous criminal who repeatedly threatened the lives of me, my family, and at real Donald Trump. The FBI emphasized its commitment to addressing such threats, stating, "The FBI does not tolerate threats and will hold offenders fully accountable." This incident highlights the persistent risks faced by public figures and the importance of vigilant law enforcement efforts to ensure their safety. Aliakbar Mohammed Amin, the 25-year-old arrested by the FBI, is a resident of Lilburn, a suburban city in Gwinnett County, Georgia. While the public record reveals limited background on Amin prior to the arrest, law enforcement sources confirmed that he had been on the FBI's radar for several weeks before the arrest. The growing concern emerged from multiple digital communications posts and messages that were flagged due to their increasingly violent rhetoric. According to the federal criminal complaint, Amin allegedly issued explicit threats directed toward President Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, the current Director of National Intelligence, and the White House. Investigators say he posted these threats through social media platforms and encrypted messaging apps where he allegedly called for violent action and encouraged others to engage in similar behavior. Some of his online statements reportedly included praise for extremist ideologies and calls for targeting specific public officials. Federal prosecutors have not publicly disclosed all the content due to the ongoing investigation, but they confirmed that the threats were serious enough to warrant immediate arrest. The threats reportedly included phrases like, "I will take matters into my own hands," and "they will see the consequences." One post allegedly suggested a plan to get to Washington before it's too late. In a joint press briefing, FBI Atlanta Special Agent Kerry Farley stated, "We take any threat to public officials, especially the President of the United States and federal leadership, with the utmost seriousness. When someone crosses the line from political dissent into criminal threat, we will take action." This case has drawn widespread attention not only because of the individuals targeted but also due to the growing concern about domestic extremism and politically motivated violence in America. Recent years have seen a disturbing uptick in threats against public servants, especially those in high-profile federal roles. Tulsi Gabbard, a former Democratic Congresswoman and 2020 presidential candidate, is known for her independent views and recent alignment with conservative and populist causes. Her appointment by President Trump as Director of National Intelligence sparked controversy but also gained her a significant following across political lines. That prominence has also made her a target for extremists from both ends of the political spectrum. After the arrest, Gabbard addressed the issue in a heartfelt video posted to her official channels. "My family and I have endured sleepless nights due to the vile threats made against us. I commend the FBI and Gwinnett County law enforcement for ensuring the safety of all those targeted by this individual." As for Donald Trump, his spokesperson issued a statement calling for the Department of Justice to remain vigilant. President Trump is thankful for the dedication of the men and women in law enforcement. "No threat against our leadership will be taken lightly." Amin is currently being held at a federal detention center in Georgia awaiting a bond hearing. He is charged with transmitting threats in interstate commerce, a federal offense that could lead to up to 5 years in prison per count, depending on how many threats are proven in court. More charges may follow as authorities continue to analyze his digital activity and communications. The case is being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Georgia, and more updates are expected as the investigation continues. The arrest of Aliakbar Mohammed Amin is not an isolated incident, but rather part of a troubling and growing trend in the United States regarding threats against public figures, particularly politicians and government officials. Over the past few years, both Republican and Democratic leaders have faced an alarming rise in violent threats, which has become an area of significant concern for law enforcement agencies across the nation. The rise of digital platforms and social media has made it easier for individuals to spread radical ideas, organize hostile campaigns, and issue threats anonymously. For figures like President Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and other public officials, the risks are not just theoretical. Threats can materialize into real violence. This phenomenon has led to greater vigilance from the FBI and other agencies tasked with safeguarding public figures. The FBI's Public Access Threat Unit, PATU, which was created to address rising concerns about threats to public officials, has seen an uptick in cases over the past few years. A 2023 report by the Department of Justice showed a sharp increase in the number of cases involving violent threats against politicians. In 2021 alone, the FBI investigated over 4,500 threats against politicians at the state and federal levels. This represents a 15% increase from 2020, which was itself a record-breaking year. Experts point to several contributing factors to this trend, including heightened political polarization, increasing distrust in government, and the normalization of extreme rhetoric in the public discourse. Social media platforms, which provide a forum for individuals to express grievances and spread extremist views, have been cited as significant amplifiers of these threats. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Telegram have often been used by individuals and groups to organize rallies, share misinformation, and, as in Amin's case, issue threats. In the wake of the 2021 Capitol insurrection, where a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol building to prevent the certification of the 2020 presidential election, the issue of threats against public figures has gained increased urgency. Lawmakers, law enforcement officials, and security agencies have made efforts to bolster the safety of high-profile individuals, including the installation of security measures at their residences, offices, and public events. Tulsi Gabbard, as both a former Congresswoman and a public figure in the Biden administration, has been the subject of various threats throughout her political career. Her outspoken stance on issues ranging from foreign policy to civil liberties has earned her both praise and criticism. While some admire her for her independent, often contrarian views, others have viewed her positions as controversial, putting her in the crosshairs of those who disagree with her. Her rise as the Director of National Intelligence under President Trump has further polarized public opinion, with some accusing her of betraying her previous political alignment. Despite the threats, Gabbard has remained resolute in her belief that open dialogue and transparency are essential to a functioning democracy. In an interview after the arrest of Amin, she emphasized the need for balance between securing public figures and ensuring that the public's freedom of speech is not unduly restricted. Similarly, President Donald Trump, who has been the target of multiple assassination attempts and numerous threats throughout his presidency, continues to be an obvious target for those who oppose him. Trump's controversial policies, inflammatory rhetoric, and polarizing leadership have earned him both a fervent base of supporters and a vocal group of detractors. The threats against him often stem from his stances on immigration, healthcare, and foreign relations, which have sparked both passionate support and intense opposition. The Trump administration, in particular, took several steps to increase security for the president, including the establishment of a dedicated security detail for public events and increased surveillance around his family members. However, such efforts have only highlighted the immense challenge law enforcement faces in preventing violent threats from materializing into real-world actions. One of the most notable incidents involving threats against Trump occurred in 2018 when an armed man, Cesar Sayoc, was arrested for mailing pipe bombs to several prominent Democrats, including former President Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and CNN. While Trump was not a direct target of this particular attack, the bombings underscored the volatility of political discourse at the time. In recent months, the FBI has become increasingly proactive in addressing these threats. As with Amin's arrest, authorities are now more frequently acting on intelligence gathered through social media surveillance, tips from concerned citizens, and direct investigations into suspicious behavior. The use of encrypted messaging apps where individuals often think they can communicate without being tracked has proven to be a significant challenge for law enforcement. However, agencies like the FBI have made strides in tracking down individuals who engage in these types of communications. Amin's case serves as a reminder that threats to public figures can stem from various sources and ideological backgrounds. While law enforcement agencies are tasked with protecting the safety of high-profile individuals, they must also balance this with protecting the rights of citizens. It is a delicate balancing act, as overreaching can stifle free speech while insufficient action may leave public officials vulnerable to harm. The legal framework surrounding threats against public figures like President Donald Trump and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is designed to deter violent acts and hold individuals accountable for attempting to harm or intimidate those in positions of power. The case of Aliakbar Mohammed Amin highlights not only the severity of such threats but also the legal consequences that can arise when individuals cross the line from political expression to criminal behavior. Amin's arrest brings into focus the importance of federal laws designed to protect public officials. Under U.S. law, threatening communications against the president or other high-ranking officials are taken extremely seriously. The federal threat statute, which makes it a federal offense to threaten the president or vice president of the United States, serves as a deterrent for would-be offenders. This law carries significant penalties, including up to 5 years in prison for individuals convicted of making threats in interstate commerce or by mail. However, making threats against public figures doesn't just involve legal statutes, it also poses challenges for the judicial system. In cases like Amin's, the courts must determine whether the individual intended to carry out the threat or if the statements were made in the heat of the moment or as part of political rhetoric. Prosecutors must prove that the defendant had a genuine intent to harm or intimidate rather than just expressing dissent or frustration. In Amin's case, the federal authorities are working to examine his online activity and social media presence to determine whether his threats were part of a broader pattern of behavior aimed at inciting violence. The FBI's investigation into Amin's digital communications will likely play a crucial role in the prosecution's case. Experts in cyber threats and digital forensics will likely analyze the encrypted messages, posts, and social media content Amin shared to build a clearer picture of his intentions. The prosecution will also examine whether Amin was acting alone or if he was part of a larger network of individuals involved in similar activities. If additional conspirators are identified, further charges could be brought against them, leading to more arrests and a broader crackdown on extremist activity online. In the case of threats against high-profile political figures, the courts also need to grapple with the balance between national security concerns and protecting the right to free speech. The First Amendment protects citizens' rights to express themselves freely, but this protection does not extend to speech that incites violence or directly threatens harm. It is within this complex legal framework that the case against Amin will be evaluated. Amin faces several criminal charges related to transmitting threats in interstate commerce. The charges are expected to include violations of Title 18 of the United States Code, which governs criminal conduct involving threats against government officials. The specific charges could include making interstate threats or attempting to intimidate or coerce federal officials, which are felonies with severe consequences. If convicted, Amin could face a lengthy prison sentence as well as fines and the possibility of probation after serving his term. The legal ramifications of Amin's actions extend beyond his personal situation and into the broader issue of how the legal system handles cases involving domestic terrorism and political extremism. In recent years, both law enforcement and judicial authorities have had to contend with the increasing threat of politically motivated violence, particularly from individuals who are radicalized by online content. This growing challenge has led to new strategies in law enforcement, including greater scrutiny of online platforms and more aggressive pursuit of individuals who engage in online radicalization. The FBI and other agencies have implemented a range of preventative measures to reduce the risk of politically motivated violence. These include increased monitoring of extremist groups, the use of advanced technology to track online activity, and efforts to counter radical ideologies before they translate into action. One notable initiative is the FBI's National Threat Assessment Center, NTC, which focuses on identifying individuals at risk of engaging in violent behavior and providing early intervention. By studying the behaviors of previous perpetrators, the NTC aims to identify patterns that could signal when an individual is preparing to act on a threat. Amin's arrest is also an important reminder of the critical role that everyday citizens play in identifying threats and reporting suspicious activity. The FBI's success in apprehending Amin before any harm could be done was in part due to tips provided by concerned individuals who recognized the danger posed by his online rhetoric. This community-driven approach to national security has proven effective in addressing the rise in extremism and threats against public figures. Furthermore, the legal system's response to this case will have far-reaching implications for how the U.S. government handles political threats in the future. With the increasing polarization of American politics, officials at all levels are facing more frequent and severe threats. The case against Amin could set a precedent for future prosecutions involving threats against public figures, helping to shape the way the U.S. legal system approaches the intersection of free speech, political activism, and national security. As the legal process moves forward, it will be closely watched by legal experts, political analysts, and citizens alike. The outcome of Amin's case could serve as a critical test for the U.S. justice system's ability to balance security and civil liberties in an age of political polarization and digital extremism. The arrest of Aliakbar Mohammed Amin has triggered a wide range of reactions across the political spectrum, shedding light on the deep divisions in American society and the current state of political discourse. As the story has made headlines, it has sparked debates about the limits of free speech, the role of social media in radicalizing individuals, and the growing threat of domestic terrorism. What's clear is that Amin's actions serve as a stark reminder of how toxic political rhetoric can lead to real-world violence, and how both public figures and the public at large are grappling with the consequences. One of the most immediate responses to Amin's arrest came from President Donald Trump, who condemned the threats against him and other public officials. While Trump has long been a target of verbal abuse and threats, he has continued to stress the importance of protecting the integrity of American democracy, even in the face of extreme opposition. In a statement released after the arrest, Trump emphasized that while people are entitled to their opinions, threats of violence should never be tolerated. Threatening the lives of public officials, no matter what side of the political spectrum they fall on, is unacceptable. Our democracy depends on the peaceful exchange of ideas, not violence. I am grateful for the law enforcement officers who continue to protect our freedoms and our public servants, Trump said. Tulsi Gabbard, who was specifically mentioned in the threats by Amin, also spoke out in the wake of his arrest. Gabbard, who has long positioned herself as a moderate voice within the Democratic Party, expressed concern about the growing trend of political violence, even as she reiterated her belief in the importance of free speech and peaceful protest. She called on both sides of the political aisle to take a step back and reflect on the impact their words have on the wider discourse. No one should have to live in fear for speaking their mind or standing up for what they believe in, Gabbard remarked in a video posted on her official social media account. But it's crucial that we, as a society, remember the difference between strong political disagreement and the incitement of violence. We must not allow our political disagreements to spiral into hatred or bloodshed. The incident has also sparked a larger conversation about the role of social media in modern political polarization. As the digital landscape has evolved, it has become a breeding ground for extremism. Platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Telegram, where users can post anonymously or under pseudonyms, have been cited as catalysts for the rise in radicalization. The ability to interact with like-minded individuals in echo chambers online has made it easier for extremist ideas to spread, leading some to argue that tech companies must be held accountable for the content shared on their platforms. Social media platforms, in particular, have come under increasing scrutiny in recent years for their role in enabling the spread of harmful content. Although these companies have implemented content moderation policies to reduce hate speech, misinformation, and violent threats, many critics argue that these measures are insufficient. In light of the Amin case, many have called for stronger regulatory measures to combat extremist content online and better policing of digital spaces to prevent individuals from inciting violence. On the other hand, free speech advocates have expressed concern that over-regulating social media platforms could infringe on individuals' constitutional rights. They argue that political speech, even if it is controversial or offensive, should not be silenced, as doing so could set a dangerous precedent for censorship. This ongoing debate reflects the tension between security concerns and the preservation of democratic values such as free expression. Law enforcement officials and political analysts have also warned that the threat of political violence is unlikely to subside anytime soon. With the U.S. already facing deep partisan divides and ongoing political tensions, the risk of future threats against public figures remains high. Domestic terrorism motivated by extremist political ideologies has become an increasingly prominent concern for both local and federal agencies. As the case against Amin progresses, it will likely serve as a bellwether for future legal and security efforts to address political violence in the U.S. The prosecution of individuals who make threats against public figures is part of a larger national security strategy that aims to prevent further escalation of political extremism. The federal government, through agencies like the FBI, has made it clear that it is committed to investigating and prosecuting those who seek to incite violence. At the same time, the public must contend with the broader implications of this case. The Amin arrest raises critical questions about the nature of modern political discourse, the role of social media in shaping public opinion, and the responsibility of individuals and platforms to curb the spread of harmful ideas. As the country moves forward, it will be essential for leaders across the political spectrum to model respectful dialogue and work to de-escalate the climate of hostility that has come to characterize much of American politics. In the weeks following Amin's arrest, there have been growing calls for a return to civility in political discussions. Some commentators argue that the constant cycle of vitriol and us versus them rhetoric has contributed to the erosion of public trust and made it easier for radical ideas to gain traction. Whether the U.S. will be able to find a way to heal its divisions and foster constructive political discourse remains to be seen.